A kind-hearted and zealous writer has every opportunity taken away from him. As things turn more miserably, the devil gives him a once-in-a-lifetime offer. In Manhattan, Jabez Stone writes his novel about a boy named Jonathan who's full of regrets, due to his crush hating him for crashing herself in the new bicycle that was given to him by his parents a day earlier for his birthday. The boy questions every decision he made that contributed to the tragedy, so he ties balloons to his bike to get rid of it, wishing he could undo everything. The father rushes to check his son's well-being. His voice awakens Jonathan's rationality about how his parents gave him such a precious gift. He hurries into the barn and opens the window to grab his bike, which is drifting away. He loses his balance and falls. Luckily, his father catches him and Jonathan tells him everything that happened. So the wise man states, there's no shortcut to happiness. The bike floats to an unknown place as Jonathan transitions from a boy to a man. Julius, a fellow writer and friend, calls Jabez to complain about a new rising author. He adds a condescending remark that his friend is clueless since he hasn't published yet. Jabez tells him that he submitted his work to a famous publicist, but Julius expresses disbelief and hangs up on him. Afterward, Jabez reports as a luxury store assistant. His colleague Rick attends to an attractive female customer and pushes the writer to assist the elderly man. Jabez warmly speaks with the older man. However, the store manager approaches them and discriminates against the customer for looking shabby. Jabez takes the tie the older man likes and pays for it with an employee discount, but the manager informs him that it's no longer applicable. Realizing he's fired, he buys the tie and chases the elderly man to hand over his gift. Afterward, he meets his brother in a restaurant to discuss their parents' anniversary. Jabez discerns how little he is compared to his rich younger brother. His brother tells him to write a poem for their parents as a contribution. Due to this, Jabez insists on writing a $500 check for the cruise. Moments later, Jabez heads to the esteemed publisher, Mr. Webster. He lies to the receptionist that he's Robert Stone, so he's allowed to the executive floor. Daniel Webster realizes he's not Robert, and the elevator doors begin to close. Desperate, the writer lets himself be sandwiched by the doors and pleads to speak with the publisher for 2 minutes. His laptop slides toward Webster as the security personnel, Frank, pushes him inside the elevator. Jabez continues begging the publisher, so he finally agrees. In the office, the writer asks about his submitted manuscript, but the publisher tells him he can only remember those worth reading. Jabez passionately reminds him about the novel's plot, which he patterned from his life. Webster comments that a real writer is someone who's already published. Realizing that Webster is pertaining to him, Jabez becomes speechless. Then he notices a strange tale displayed in a frame behind Webster. He inquires about it, but the man vaguely says he won it. He shakes Jabez's hand and advises him to write something better before urging him to leave. That evening, the writer meets his closest friends, Julius, Mike, and Molly, to tell his experience with the publisher. The self-absorbed Julius calls someone he knows, but he's ignored. To divert his embarrassment, he probes about Jabez's encounter, anticipating the failure which is proven true. Julius disregards him and greets Constance, a famous editor. Then he brags about a series of books that will be published after feeling of loss, while Mike and Molly fake their interest. Constance invites Julius to join them, so he leaves his friends while pointing out to Jabez that this is a writer's life. Mike mocks Julius as he leaves to lighten his friend's mood. Then he accompanies Jabez to an ATM where they discover he only has $1 left in his account, as the younger Stone cashed his check. On his way home, he's blocked by thugs who beat him up, destroying his laptop. Upon returning home, he looks at his miserable reflection and states that he'd sell his soul to trade places with Julius. He takes his old typewriter to vent his anger and relentlessly types the money he wishes to have. However, the device breaks, angering him, so he throws it out the window. The typewriter hits an elderly lady's head and she collapses while her husband calls for help. Jabez panics and feels regretful for his actions, but he's interrupted by the doorbell. He opens the door and finds the wealthy customer from the boutique on the day he was fired. Then he debates what to do in his current situation, to call the police or get a lawyer. The cops arrive at the scene and the elderly man points at Jabez as the culprit. The police knock on his door and he becomes frantic. The woman pushes him into the closet and faces the cops who are asking for an explanation for the broken window. The woman pretends to be clueless and the cops see that the window isn't broken. After the police leave, Jabez steps out and inquires about her identity. The woman repeats his words about selling his soul to trade places with Julius, implying that she's the devil. She offers a deal to trade his soul in exchange for what he wants the most. Jabez states he wants to write a book that lasts, but the devil says she can't help. The writer insists that he's talented, so the woman diverts his wants, focusing on books that sell. She suggests having an audience for him, so he proclaims he wants respect from everyone. The devil manipulates him until he finally declares he wants success. She states that the contract lasts for 10 years, then she takes what is hers. Jabez remains hesitant because he's preoccupied with the elderly woman who passed away. To erase his concerns, the devil cures the injured woman. To seal the contract, she approaches him to initiate a kiss. The following day, he wakes up happily with the beautiful woman beside him. He sees a dark mark on his lower back, which upsets the devil when he touches it, so she leaves. The doorbell rings and a mailman arrives with a parcel. Jabez opens it, surprised to receive a sum of money. He gives a huge tip to the mailman and opens the letter, finding out that Constance's publishing house is apologizing for rejecting him weeks ago and offering him a contract. He hurries to the address and catches everyone's attention. A woman waiting for a taxi notices his celebrity-like appearance, boosting his mood. Even the receptionist in the publishing building greets him happily, which is the complete opposite of how he was treated the other day. Soon, he meets Constance, who greets him warmly and introduces Ki-young, the vice president of publicity and promotions, who's currently pregnant. In the office, he asks about the book, and the editor informs him that she has already ordered 100,000 copies to publish. When asked what she thinks about it, she says she loves it but comments that the main character is too indecisive. Jabez justifies that it's the story's core, but the editor disagrees. Still, she declares that the deal is closed. Afterward, Jabez's prosperous life continues without him putting much effort. Taxis stop for him, he transfers to a luxurious condo, shares the night with Constance and other beautiful women, and receives movie adaptation offers for his book. One evening, he walks to his favorite restaurant with Mike. His friend asks about his career and probes about the quality of his books. Jabez ignores him, stressing the sales. Mike coughs terribly, so he advises him to stop smoking, tossing the cigarette away. In the restaurant, they're surprised to see a disheveled Julius, assisted by his wife. Molly informs them that Webster Books accuses him of plagiarism. Julius denies the allegation, but Molly mouths that it's word for word. Julius sobs, since Constance requires him to return the advance payment. A woman from another table interrupts them to express how she and her friends adore Jabez, while the writer acknowledges her briefly and focuses on sympathizing with Julius. The following day, Constance presents the published book copies, but Jabez becomes disappointed upon learning that the title has been changed and is the inverted version of Julius's book, Loss of Feeling. Though he argues about his friend's well-being, the editor convinces him. Evening comes and the book launch commences in a luxurious venue. The devil arrives to congratulate him, while Constance and an associate, John Hardy, mock the worthlessness of the book, but celebrate the editor's success in promoting such trash. Meanwhile, Jabez expresses sympathy toward Julius, but the devil ignores his concerns and leaves. Amidst the celebration, Webster sarcastically congratulates Jabez, but Hardy arrives and jokingly comments that the writer should be ashamed of himself. Then, Julius barges into the party, loudly declaring that Jabez stole his book. He punches his friend and smirks at him before leaving. Mike chases after Julius and scolds him for his behavior. However, the selfish writer has no remorse and calls a taxi. Unfortunately, the vehicle loses control and hits him, taking his life. Afterward, Jabez's books remain best-selling despite harsh criticisms due to his poor writing quality. One evening, his new woman asks him how he feels, and Jabez says he feels nothing. The following day, Constance calls him, telling him to ignore all the bad critics as long as the books sell. On Jabez's birthday, people gather to celebrate. As the birthday song ends, Ki-young approaches him to tell him she's leaving earlier because of her daughter. The writer asks if this is her baby, but the vice president corrects him, saying her daughter has already turned 5. After the party, Jabez takes an old box with his old things. Mike calls him to meet with him, but the writer tells him that he's busy and jokes about going smoking instead. His friend responds that he quit smoking long ago, and Jabez comments that the last time they met was a few months ago. Mike corrects him that it's been a while, but insists that tomorrow is the only day he can meet with him, so the writer tells him to drop by at 5 in his apartment. The following day, Jabez looks for another villa by the beach. He suddenly sees the devil, so he catches up to her. He demands more time since everything happened so fast, and he feels like others' ideas of success are sweeping him away. He adds that he wants to finish the novel he was writing when he met her. The devil angrily tells him that success is what he asked for, so he should roll with it. That afternoon, Mike arrives at Jabez's apartment in the middle of a photo shoot. The writer invites him to sit down, but he doesn't hide the fact that his friend is disturbing him, so he requests to reschedule. Mike insists he only has today, so he stands, mustering his courage to tell something important. Constance interrupts them to announce another success. but Mike suddenly throws up in the middle of the set. The crew reacts in disgust, but then Jabez angrily yells at Mike, asking what he wants to say. Finally, Jabez asks if Mike wants some money, which disappoints even Constance. His friend stares at him before bidding him goodbye. The writer asks his crew to begin shooting, but Ki Young comments that they already lost the light, making him realize that he already lost himself. At dawn, Molly calls Jabez to inform him that Mike has passed away. As the sun rises, he and Constance attend an award ceremony where he meets a real writer, Robert Stone, who sarcastically comments about his book. Jabez receives the literary award for fiction, and the host doesn't shake his hand. Remembering Mike, he tells the people how tough of a critic he was to him, but when he praises his work, it's genuine. He regrets evading his friend, embarrassed of his trashy books. As tears fall from his eyes, Webster observes him intently. Afterward, he heads to Mike's bar where his friends are. He reminisces with Molly and confesses how he treated Mike in his last moments. He says he likes his old self better, and his friends agree before heading out. The following day, Jabez summons the devil to break the contract and return everything. She asks him how he'll return the women he spent nights with. Tongue-tied, the devil gives him his old laptop and challenges him to turn back time, emphasizing that the novel in his device is something no one is interested to read. The following day, Jabez approaches Webster to submit his unfinished novel about Jonathan. The publisher disregards him at first, but Jabez insists that it's something he wrote before he met the devil. Then he confirms if the tale in his office is from the devil and asks for advice. The publisher asks if he wants to break the contract and his reason for doing so. Jabez explains that he lost the important people in his life and even himself. With this, Webster takes him on a walk to tell him that the only way to do it is to take it to court. The devil arrives and the publisher meets her. Their hostility is evident due to the tale Webster took from her, so she agrees to have a trial to get even with him. Afterward, the publisher asks Jabez what exactly he requested. The writer tells him it's success, disappointing the older man. Then Webster inquires about his most satisfying moment with the contract, and he confesses there's none. The older man thanks and urges him to leave before reading the incomplete manuscript. Soon, he calls Jabez about their trial. They head to Garden City, where people have gathered. The writer is surprised to witness that they're the characters in his novels. They enter a barn and discover that his jury is composed of the most famous writers ever. He gets shocked upon learning that the judge is Julius, who's hostile toward him. Webster delivers his opening statement that Jabez entered the deal with a clouded judgment through the sufferings he encountered in a single day, which the devil took advantage of. The woman defends that she gave what he wanted, and now he's backing out of the deal. Webster calls Mike the first witness. He established their solid relationship and how unfortunate his circumstances were. To make a point, he asks if Jabez is happy, and Mike affirms it. Then he asks if the quality of his writing improved after he became famous, and Mike firmly disagrees. Webster emphasizes that his client wanted to bring happiness and gain happiness by writing, which didn't happen after entering the contract. The devil gives a series of questions inserting Julius in the scenario, which catches the judge's attention. Webster reminds him that he shouldn't interject with his personal comments. Then she asks questions that'll make Jabez look jealous of Julius's success, which leads to destroying his friend. The judge curses at Jabez despite Webster's reminders of fairness. The devil continues her line of questioning to prove how terrible Jabez's personality is by making Mike say that he's offered money after finally sharing his terminal condition with someone. Mike defends his friend, but the devil emphasizes that the writer's soul isn't worth saving. Webster is about to call the next witness, but the woman interrupts to give a proposal. If Webster lets go of the case, she'll let his soul go and take Jabez's. The writer agrees, since he deems himself unworthy and wishes to save the publisher. Instead of answering, Webster calls the next witness, Jabez Stone. He asks the writer if there's anyone he loves and loves him back. Jabez tells him there's none besides Mike and his family, but Mike is now gone. Furthermore, he mentions his brother, who he can't even see due to his tight schedule. Webster asks him if he thinks he's successful without anyone to love and anyone who loves him back. Jabez proclaims he's a complete failure, and the publisher ends the questioning. The devil asks questions that will make him look selfish, as he only loves himself. For the closing arguments, the devil blames the creator for making such a painful world, making people run to her because she can give what they want. She bluntly concludes that it's so easy to bring people to damnation, adding that she only gave Jabez what he wanted, success. Webster argues that his client has been blocked in every way from success, but ironically, he received everything aside from what he wanted the most, to be a writer. He declares that it's because the devil clouded his judgment. He emphasizes that the creature alone has no powers because she was banished. And that is why she works tirelessly to collect souls, because only then can she exercise free will, one thing she never has. The devil tricked him into thinking that success is more of the worldly things she can manipulate, while disregarding the one thing he genuinely wants to have, readers. Webster uses this to relate with everyone in the room. He points out that they all want someone to listen. Then he questions the devil's trick into giving him fame, money, power, and an audience. The audience can't find anything in his writing because he has no soul. They have to protect his soul because he initially had a kind heart. Webster takes Jabez's unfinished manuscript and reads the lines where the father reminds Jonathan that there's no shortcut to happiness. The devil angrily stops him from talking, but Webster approaches her and tells her eye to eye that she should be the one who understands exactly what the lines say. He finishes his closing argument by stating that it's good to be reminded by someone. The devil wishes to argue, but Julius stops her. Moments later, the jury comes up with a decision. Julius happily reads that the contract is null and void. The crowd celebrates, and Webster ushers Jabez to the exit. The man turns around and stares at the publisher with appreciation. The next thing he knows, he's sitting in front of his laptop in his old house, reading the last lines of his unfinished manuscript. His phone rings and he smiles as he answers the call from his friend, Julius. He asks what time it is as he manages to turn it back.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.